if you're here, then you've also found out, like many other people, that most of the users who start your free trial are not there to stay. And you're definitely not alone. Statistically, about 60 to 80% of people who start B2B SaaS trials will only log in the one time. They'll click around a little bit, maybe, and then they'll leave. So we're here today to find out how to keep them in your app, keep them logging back in day after day, and keep them engaging so we can eventually get them to activate, get them to see the initial value that they were after. Obviously, they signed up for a reason. And then, of course, hopefully, they choose to upgrade to become paying customers because they're getting value out of our product. Let's get into it. So first off, how are we not going to do this? We're not going to send people hundreds of emails. We are not going to send tons of communication. We're not going to use pop-ups. We're not going to use SMS. We're not going to use email even to barrage our users with tons and tons and tons of information. That doesn't help anyone. In fact, it can actually have the opposite effect and make them a bit more overwhelmed, which you'll see later on is one of the big problems already. We're not going to use any scammy checkout techniques. That means, sorry, I'm terrible at drawing these lines. That means we will not have any urgency tactics, countdown timers, buy now or else. We might use sales tactics, sure. We might have discounts, sure. We might have some urgency, yeah. But we're marketers, that's kind of our job, but we're not going to be scammy about it. This is not a quick hack or a cheat sheet. It is just like a real world strategy that people actually use, that I use with great success to get people back in an engage, right? The whole idea is to add value. I'm sure you've heard that millions of times. Add value, add value, add value, right? So everything that we do here to get our free trial users back into the product is to add value to their lives. And then of course, without revamping your entire product UI, there's this like misconception that UI needs to be so streamlined, so sexy, and so cool that you don't need any additional marketing materials around it. Like if you could create the perfect UI, it would just like pull someone through your product experience perfectly and they would just buy your product because they figured out how it works. Well, yeah, UI is definitely important, but but it's not a silver bullet. We all look for silver bullets. I look for silver bullets all the time. I want a silver bullet. I want people to engage with my stuff, but there isn't one. It's just a culmination of lots of different things piling together that get you where you want to be. So forget about the UI for a second. We could talk about that. We can talk about surveys. We can talk about in-app kind of guidelines or what we like to call bumpers, so things that pop up as you're exploring the product. Those are all absolutely useful, and yes, they do have a place, but not for people who are not in your app anyway. If they're not there, then you can build as much of a beautiful UI as you like. You're not going to get them back in. Okay, and here is why we're going to do all of this, right, to keep people. And it's basically all about retention and the economy of scale. So you probably know this working in a startup, but acquiring new customers is really expensive. And if they keep churning out, right, if 60% of them go, oh, no thanks, on day one, they don't even give you a chance, you're going to be paying a lot to keep those customers. So we want to keep in mind that acquiring new people is very expensive. Keeping the people that are already there, well, that can have a big result on your profit margins. You can get a 125% increase in profit or revenue just by retaining a few more people. So if you want to do a quick calculation right now, I'm going to do like with simple full numbers, but let's say you have 100 users coming into your app, right? And pretend you're on the good end. We have 60 people who stay, but only of those 60, we have a, let's say 1% conversion rate. So 6 people sign up. Okay, and then we have our 6 people who've signed up, and let's say each of those is worth $80. Okay, let me bring up a quick calculator for us. All right, so all you need to do is you go, if we were to add, let's say we're adding 10% to our 6 people. So with our onboarding, we have, or, we could even add 30% more people. Generally, that's the goal I like to start with, is can we get 30% more efficiency out of your current signups? So we will go 6 times 30% is 0.3. So 6 plus 1.8 people, we'll round that up to 2. So that would be 10 people. So now we have 2 people, and instead of having our 6 people, we have 10. So that's $800. And you have made $160 just by optimizing your onboarding and making sure that you're getting people back into the app. It's that simple. Nothing fancy. All right, and then profits. That's a classic one, retention. So obviously this is about churn. Now, retention wise, if your people are onboarded properly, which they should be if you want to keep them in, then we have another great one. If 3 of your 6 people are disappearing every month, then it's going to be really hard for you to scale. Whereas if 5 out of 6 people are staying, right, then it's going to be really easy for you to scale, because every month you're adding, and you're not dropping off people. So that's why we're doing this work, and it's really important to keep this in mind, because you don't want to be spending effort somewhere that it's not worth it, right? So for example, this little 100 user worth $80 a month example, if you are only converting 6 people a month, this kind of optimization, it's not for you, right? Do the maths, check, make sure that a 30% increase in users will get you at least $1,000 every month. Do those calculations first before getting into the actual work. Save yourself some time. Okay, let's get into the how. Right, I'm gonna zoom way in. Our premise is that 80% of people bounce, 20% of people don't. 20% of people are going to continue giving you that chance, right? They're going to come back tomorrow. Now, how many of those 20% come back the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day? That is a good question and something for a whole new video. What we're focusing on today is the 80% who are not coming back tomorrow, the 80% who disappear. So they can go into one of 2 areas. They can either go here, right? And they are a drive-by. They're someone who just wants to take a peek. Maybe they saw your tool in someone's newsletter, or someone recommended to them, and they were like, that sounds curious. I'm curious about that. Sounds interesting. Those folks are kind of just drive-bys. They click around a little bit. Maybe they do a few little bits and pieces, and then poof, they're gone. They don't really care too much. On the other hand, are other people. If we go this way, these folks were actually in the maximum effort bucket, right? But now they are confused and overwhelmed. They signed up. This task was bigger than maybe they anticipated, or maybe it was always a big task. Maybe they were just optimistic. They signed up, and now they're like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I have no idea how to do this. So a good example could be someone who signs up to a technical product. They know a little bit about a little technical stuff, but not too much. And then they get hit in the face with big old integrate your API to continue. And they immediately go, oh, I'm going to need a developer for that. That's a bit more work. I don't really have time. I don't like talking to the developer anyway. He's kind of weird. And we get into the kind of roadblock section, right? They don't know how to continue, so they stop in their tracks. That's it. It's kind of done. And they never actually go back in because of this overwhelm. Now, it might not be too strong at the beginning. They might log back in, and you might be thinking, oh, this person's a maximum effort person. That could be the case, but it could also be the case that your maximum effort person who is logged in had a great first day, and then logs in again and hits one of their roadblocks, kind of starts like going in to confused and overwhelmed, right? They mosey on over there, and suddenly with time they're kind of like, that's not great. I don't know what to do next. Let me go do something I know how to do, something that isn't so scary. Right. So this is how I want you to think about your subscribers or your new users when they first sign up, right? You know you've got some people going into this bucket, you've got some people going into this bucket, and you have some people going into this bucket. Now, what your job is to figure out who's in what bucket and then get them into the bucket that you want. So obviously, this is the bucket we want everyone in. When someone is in maximum effort mode, and yes, if you're wondering where the reference is, it's from Deadpool, the first one, maximum effort. So if you want someone in the maximum effort box, it's great when they're there because they're self-motivated, they're driven, they know the value, they are willing to put in the work, they're willing to work with you, especially if your product is kind of intense to get started. They're willing to put that intensity in because their pain or their motivation is so strong that it's really pushing them and pulling them towards your solution if it's a good fit. Now, those people also fall off the bandwagon in places. We'll discuss that in a bit, but really you want to get them into that box. That's step one. So for our drive-bys, I just want to take a peek. You don't want them to go into confused and overwhelmed, obviously. You want them to go straight into maximum effort. And our confused and overwhelmed people, you don't want them to you do want them to go into maximum effort. You don't want them to go from maximum effort to confused and overwhelmed. So that's the flow chart here. Now you know what each group is. Let's chat about what you need to do to get, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see there's some nice little arrows to the side, what you need to do for these people and for these different segments. Now, I'll give you a quick example for drive-bys. I recently signed up to a cold emailing platform called Lemlist. You might have heard of it. If you're in sales, you've definitely heard of it. Lemlist is a way to automatically reach out to thousands of prospects, etc., etc., etc. Has all the fancy tools, all the fancy features. It's an industry standard. People absolutely rave about it. They love it. However, I had no idea how to do cold emailing. So I quickly went into I'm just looking at this into confused and overwhelmed and mode and went, I'll do this later. Did I do it later? No. So what Lemlist needs to do to get me to engage again is they need to send me educational material that wakes me up to the problem. So webinars are good, and positioning yourself as the authority in the subject field is definitely what you want people to feel when they read your content. You have their email address. They're not really ready for a trial. A trial is not something that they need, but you will still want to send them educational materials and nurture them. Basically, you're throwing them into a nurture, okay? For a maximum effort folks, you have to help them get out their own way. So I mentioned sometimes our overwhelmed people go into maximum effort, but it's still easy to fall off the bandwagon after day one and get distracted by things. Your kids are screaming, your car broke down, the dog needs walking, your boss is messaging you on Slack. Anything could be happening during these moments. So you help them get out their own way. Remember why they signed up in the first place, why they were so motivated in the first place, and help them get back to achieving the crazy value that you're obviously going to add to their lives. Here's how you do that. Give hands-on support. You can nudge action by kind of just reminding people that you exist. Like, hey, don't forget about us. Creating urgency around their problem. Now, I don't mean scammy urgency. I mean, how much is their current problem costing them? How much is, let's say I had maximum effort for our Lemlist example, how much is my lack of action going to negatively affect me? How much money am I losing? How much money could I earn from just one person saying yes to a cold email? That's what you want to talk about. That's the urgency that you want to create all around their current problem state. Obviously, you need to know what that problem state is. And then you could also show them how others have done it. Maybe they need a little bit more concrete proof that this works, or concrete examples of how it works. And then, yeah, the cost of inaction, we've already kind of covered that, but putting that in again, reminding them of the cost of inaction is always a winner. So for our overwhelmed people, they need you to turn their mountains into molehills. They need you to take this massive task of getting set up and break it down into the most basic steps possible. Specifically, the next best step. Now you can do this in a customer journey. Anyone who builds you a customer journey should be creating some kind of timeline. And on that timeline, you have problem, you have evaluation, and then you have value or continued value. So in our problem stage, right, we have maybe some interest. We're showing, sorry, my writing is terrible on this. We have some interest, we're showing them webinars, we're describing what the problems may be, we're kind of nurturing them, right? So people in the interest phase would definitely be probably more in the drive-by box. And then from interest, they're moving over to seeing the first kind of value, right? So if we break evaluation into first value and value realization, two very simple boxes. First value would be the very first thing that they do where they're like, I see this works. It's the thing that they have to do in order to continue. So for example, in this case, if I had my API that needed to be connected, I need the API to be connected in order for me to show someone that this actually automatically brings in all of your data and analyzes it in an instant. But they have to connect the API first. So I'm not going to talk about how to bring in the data, how to analyze it, how to fine tune it, etc. My very first step, I'm just going to be talking about the API and how important it is to do that first. How to do that, the steps to doing that, I'm going to really break it down. Later on, if someone moves into value realization, that means that they've got their API connected. Now they actually need to use the damn thing. So in value realization, I might be talking a little bit more about how to do that. I'm going to give them more examples. I'm going to give them inspiration. I'm going to give them case studies as well. I'm going to hype up the outcome of actually starting to use that API. Those are the specifics of overwhelm. Now, obviously, I've got all the things over here. We want to connect people with support. There's tons of examples that you can really do. But in this evaluation stage, right, in this customer journey, we really want to be helping people figure out the next best step. So even if you have to break this down into more, right? So first value could be broken down into 3 individual micro steps that you need someone to get through. Some folks have a checklist. So if you look at Monday.com, for example, they have a pretty decent little checklist. They want you to follow these actions. That's not bad, but the problem with a visible checklist is it can also lead to overwhelm because people feel like too much is happening and they're not sure what to do next. Okay, that is what you need to do, what your job is. Now, let's figure out how to do that job. First, in our email inbox, we need, and we're going to use email to get people back in. We have their email, they've happily handed it over. So now it's time to remind them that we exist and do whatever they need us to do. So for our drive-bys, how to figure out which one is which. Drive-bys are pretty easy. They log in once and never again. This is usually going to happen within 4 days. So in 4 days' time, if you see that someone has not logged in ever, then you can happily tag them nurture. If you see that they have logged in, maybe they have only completed the most basic setup function after 4 days, but under 10 days. So 10 days, then you know that they need some help. They're engaged, but they need a little bit more assistance. So for these guys, that's going to be where you want to put the majority of your effort. You can tell between 4 and 10 days whether or not they're in this block, right? Well, actually, you could technically tell day 0 whether or not they're in this block. So from 0 to 10 days, we're looking for signals and we can tag them as engaged. For highly engaged people, that's very easy. They're logging in regularly. We can see that they're seeing value, they're getting usage. We can see that they're going into documentation, they're contacting support. They're basically highly engaged. So the tags I would use here is marketer, and these are customizable obviously to your personal preference, but for me these are the most descriptive ones. We always want our tags to be really descriptive so it's easy to remember what they are. Nurture for the people who need nurturing. Engaged for the people who are engaged. Highly engaged for the people who are giving us all of the right signals. That is how I would do it. So you can use these, opens one or more emails, or responds to your surveys, maybe completes a basic setup function, basically a few little engagement things, not as little as these guys and not as much as these guys. This is going to change depending on your software, depending on what you have in app. So it has to be a little bit vague in this example, but if you need help with it, please reach out. I'm happy to chat about it. Okay, next up, what kind of emails are we going to send these people? So our drive-bys we can quite easily actually ignore their trial because they're not going to convert, and trying to get them to convert and measuring the success of our campaigns, of our marketing, measuring our KPIs on people who are not ready to purchase is just a bit foolish, right? Because we're going to be optimizing for the wrong kinds of people. We want to optimize our campaigns for these guys, all right? That's how we can tell if something's working or not. For these folks, we want to send them educational material, webinars, newsletters, email courses, blog posts, anything. And we could even send them a "should you even be here" message. For example, I would have loved if Lemlist had said, "Hey, we've noticed you haven't used your trial at all. Would you like us to press pause on it and give it back to you at a later date?" Yes, please. Perfect, right? That's ideal. Now they got me to engage, they got me to talk to them. If I was a market qualified lead, then their salesperson could potentially reach out to me and say, "Hey, wondering what didn't go great, like why did you pause, what's going on? Can I assist?" Now, one tool that does this so well and has always really done this well is Ahrefs. So they're an SEO tool, and they send out a digest to their general list, right? So you get more specific emails, you get usage emails from them if you're using their tool. But if you're not using their tool, and I'm not, I've just signed up a while ago and canceled my subscription, then they'll send you the digest. Now, the digest isn't newsletter number one, although it does have digest. But look at this. Oh, that's a bit of a big line. Look at this great subject line, right? These subject lines are so awesome because they're giving you kind of like teases as to what this contains and how it's going to help you. So if I was interested in SEO, it's going to give me all of these SEO related things, right, that I want to know, but I might not be able to do yet. So Ahrefs is an excellent example to look at if you are looking for some inspiration for educational newsletters that you should be sending out to your user base. Maximum effort, folks. These guys don't need as many emails as the rest, obviously. And what's really important for them is that you're sending contextually relevant emails. So you're sending stuff that is timeous, right? So you're not sending off-key messaging, and you're sending messaging that is personalized, ideally. There's a few different ways to personalize. I won't get into it here. But you really want to make sure that people feel like you're seeing them, you can serve them, you can give them their desired outcome. So obviously you have to do customer research, figure out what those problems and pains are, what the desires and motivations are, and of course what the outcomes and results that they want out of usage is. Okay. Good example here is some emails from a service called Clipwing. These emails are actually really simple. I don't even need to show you the email because the subject line says it all, right? It's just a quick prompt. It's prompting me, "Welcome. Where are your clips? Your video has been uploaded." It's just popping up in my inbox saying, "Hey, do you remember us? Do you remember us?" And this email, actually, interestingly, I never opened it until I obviously opened it recently to analyze it. I never even opened it, but I still went back into the app and actually uploaded my first video. So it's a good example of how one little email, really well timed, can just get someone to take action, even if they don't open it, even if they don't click on it. Perfect. So these guys, you're going to send them sales sequences as well, right? When it's time to end their trial, you want them to upgrade. You want to send these kind of sequences. You want to bring the case studies in. You want to connect them to sales teams, perhaps, or customer support. Say, hey, we noticed you've gotten some usage out of this. Just want to figure out how things are going. Those personal emails can work really well for B2B SaaS. Feature explainers, right? Some more advanced features that you might want to publicize, or features that are included in your pro trial only. Outcome-based prompts. So just like, yeah, you could get this if you continue. If you don't continue, here's what you're going to be losing out on. A great subject line that I love using is, aren't you tired of? Or don't you deserve to? Or that kind of like negative section. So you could say, tired of clicking through your emails one by one, question mark. Or you could say, aren't you tired of clicking through your emails one by one, right? That aren't you is just such an emotional pull, and you really want to be using that emotional language when it comes to our maximum effort people. You do not need to talk about your features. They know what your features are. They're using them. Right? What you want to talk about is the benefits, the value. That is what it's all about, value for these folks. Now, our overwhelmed people, these are slightly more difficult because it depends where they are. So if they are in first value, then you don't want to be sending them too much in terms of sales stuff, right? If they're in first value, they're usually still quite overwhelmed. If they're in value realization, they're kind of leaning more towards max effort, right? It all depends on your users. And this is obviously not like black and white. It'd be great if it was black and white, but continuously in marketing, we're always working with shades of gray. And because data is so available to us, we have to be really comfortable with doing the extra work to figure out these little in-between bits. So here's what else we can send people who are overwhelmed and stuck in first value, right? They haven't gotten full value realization. We can send them step-by-step guides, intro guides. We send them notifications, not necessarily like sales sequences. We lean more into like, hey, this is ending, just so you know, kind of thing. We send them case studies, just like we would send our maximum F people. Personal win backs can also be really effective here, as our feature explainers, outcome-based prompts. It is very similar. The language and positioning that you'd use between these two might differ though. So you can save some time with your materials appealing to both groups, right? I think the biggest difference here is when trial is ending. That is my big difference in style of email. You can get away with using similar emails for these sections otherwise. Now, usage emails get sent out quite frequently by apps, and this is my most annoying example that I could possibly find. I recently signed up to a Monday.com trial. Now, it didn't ask me what kind of notifications I wanted when I started up. It asked me a bunch of other stuff. But what it's done is it's set up an automated daily reminder, right? Hey, you have highlights, you have tasks, things are happening, things are happening, things are happening. Plus this really ugly kind of subtitle. This really ugly subtitle that feels overwhelming as it is. There's so many characters there, it's like, right? So definitely this is kind of an anti-maximum effort. It's making people feel overwhelmed. So when you send your usage emails, use them sparingly. Send one a week. Don't send one a day. That would be my advice. Unless you are sure that they are happily in maximum effort and will do well with maximum communication. Well, that is everything from me today. If you would like to follow me elsewhere, you can continue on YouTube over here, or otherwise sign up to the newsletter and I will send you some great stuff every week or every 2 weeks, depending on how much stuff I collect. And then I'm also pretty active on Twitter and on Instagram, as well as, of course, LinkedIn, which is probably where you're watching this video. So give those a follow if you want to continue watching these. I think the next topic is going to be about user activation. If something I spoke about today was really interesting, feel free to send me a message. I'm not a person that's inaccessible. I will respond, and I will even make a video for you if I get enough similar-ish requests. So yeah, thanks for watching and have a great day.